So, hi everyone, hopefully you can hear me if you've got a headset. If not, I'll try and shout. Thanks so much for joining us at Big Data London. At BBC Studios, we've been going through a significant transformation as a business. We operate in incredibly challenging markets at difficult times. Data is fundamental to any organisation, and we've been looking at how we need to change how we operate as a business to realise the value of that. I'm Ross Gaskell. I'm the Software Engineering Manager for Commercial Data Products at BBC Studios. I'm a software engineer by trade. I started working in marketing and finance, and I joined the BBC in 2018 as a software engineer. First exposure to big data was leading our analytics migration from one vendor to another platform, and it really highlighted how a vendor change can have a significant impact on an organisation without a well thought out data strategy. I left the BBC in 2021 to join Sainsbury's as engineering manager for marketing planning and insights platform, and one of my teams was a data engineering team helping our suppliers to use our first party data to make data-driven decisions that help their organisation. And there we saw the necessity for effective data DevOps and observability of data. I rejoined Studios in March, and I now lead our software and data engineering functions as we build out our new data capabilities. Now, I don't think I need to explain what the BBC is to this audience. Hopefully you all know the BBC. But a little bit of background to BBC Studios. We're the commercial subsidiary of the BBC. We're fully owned by the BBC, and our purpose is to maximise commercial revenue to generate returns back to the BBC that help fund our programme making and trusted global journalism. We do this by making programmes for British and international broadcasters, including the BBC, and we sell BBC programmes and formats internationally. We also operate BBC.com outside the UK, which is one of the most popular and crucially trusted news brands globally, with over 500 million unique visitors, and that generates advertising revenue through online ads. It's a really exciting business to be part of. But one of the challenges we face is our limited data capabilities as an organisation. And to explain why we're in the state that we are, let me take you through the history of BBC Studios and how we were formed. So, going back to 1995, BBC Worldwide was created after a review of our commercial operations at the BBC, with a focus on finding new ways to generate commercial revenue from the content and programmes we already made at the BBC. In 2017, if we fast forward, our in-house productions company transferred to a commercial entity, which merged with Worldwide in 2018 to form a unified content production and distribution house. In 2019, we acquired the remaining 50% share of UK TV, which channels like Gold and Dave from Discovery. And in 2021, GNL became part of BBC Studios, and GNL operates the BBC website outside the UK and does ad sales on our BBC News channel globally. Now, as a result of being formed from various distributed and separate entities, our end result is a complicated data estate, where data is siloed in different parts of the organisation. We've got duplicated infrastructure, we have different tools, technologies, cloud providers, and it results in data not being easily shareable across the organisation and wasted efforts from maintaining multiple data architectures. And that's really important for us at Studios. We're quite a lean organisation, so we need to be optimising what our people work on to make sure it's driving and delivering on value. Also, as you might imagine, effective governance of this data is a challenge because it's all over the place, and it's created a very risk-averse culture around data governance and privacy due to the lack of confidence and visibility into our data estate. So yeah, it's obvious the way things we have set up isn't particularly efficient, but it also severely limits our ability to use data to optimize and grow our business. And I'm going to walk through a couple of those challenges with you right now. Firstly, we have various web properties work across Studios, often with an overlap in audience segments. For example, we operate the Top Gear website, which has got loads of content targeted at motoring enthusiasts. We also operate UK TV Play, which has episodes of Top Gear and other motoring shows. It's likely that there's some crossover in the audiences between these two products, but we've not had an effective way of linking those products together to be able to either optimize our advertising revenue through targeting or improve content recommendations. And also with the changes in the industry around browser technology and the move away from third-party cookies, a first-party solution to this problem becomes more important than ever. Another challenge we have is the inability to join certain data sets securely in a central platform to get deeper understanding of our audience. If we strip back the news index here on bbc.com, we have the content, our world-renowned and well-trusted journalism created by BBC News. Outside the UK, we have our advertising, and we also have our audience behaviour and demographic data. Now, currently we can do some basic content performance evaluation. We can see, what pieces of content are popular with different audiences. And we can also evaluate how profitable a piece of content is by looking at the advertising revenue. The missing link, however, is how we can join different data sets such as our audiences and advertising data. And what that does is prevent us being able to evaluate the advertising value of individual members of our audience or different audience segments, or being able to create advanced audience segments for ad targeting using the first-party data that we own. And the final challenge we have is how do we become more relevant to our audience? And it's a challenge that a lot of us in the media industry face. These are two screenshots of what bbc.com would look like. One on the left is if you were living in Arizona, and on the right in Quebec. And if we mask the ads here, you'll see there's no difference in the audience experience, despite being literally on opposite ends of the North American continent. The challenge we face in studios is up to now, we haven't been able to control the BBC website internationally because it's built by our colleagues in public service and it's designed for UK audiences first. But being unable to make bbc.com relevant to global audiences really hurts us because whilst in the UK we have brand dominance, we are the most trusted and most accessed news service in the UK. Globally, however, we're a challenger brand. And in North America, there are many large, well-established and well-funded news organisations that we compete with. Now, on Monday, we made a really exciting announcement that is the new beta launch of bbc.com outside of the UK. And that's going live in North America in October in a public beta. And what this does is this provides, for the first time in BBC Studios, an owned and operated product built specifically for the international market. Now, sadly, if you're here in the UK, you won't be able to see it because it's only for our international audiences. But next time you're on holiday, have a little look and see what you think. What this does is prevent a really exciting opportunity for us, though, as well. Because we now control the experience, we can create a more personal experience by using data to drive the content that our audience sees, to make sure it's more relevant to their location and their interests in the world. Now, to make this happen, my team have been working behind the scenes on a new data platform that will power bbc.com and our other direct-to-consumer properties. Our approach has been to start building a data mesh. Now, there's a room here of data professionals. I'm sure you know the term probably better than I do. But if you're not quite familiar with what that is, let's dive into what is data mesh. And it's a term first coined by Zhamak Dehghani. And it's a concept to answer some of the pain points of a centralized data function, particularly where that central data team becomes a bottleneck, where the team cannot handle the quantity of questions or requests for data in the business quickly enough to help those teams make well-informed decisions. Data mesh changes that model by decentralizing the data. So it gives domain teams the ownership and responsibility of their data. And why we do that is because they've got the most domain knowledge of that data. So it makes sense for it to sit with the domain teams. Next, we treat data as a product, applying product thinking onto data. And this means having domain teams consider and satisfy the needs of other domains within the platform by providing high quality data. Basically, treating data in a domain the same way you would if you were building a public API. And then our base foundations is shared data infrastructure as a service. Not only does this help optimize the technical operation of the platform by having a central team and by not duplicating efforts in managing infrastructure across the organization, but by having shared tools and systems to build and execute and maintain interoperable data products, this enables our data teams to seamlessly consume and create data products that are richer and have more insight by being able to easily access other sources of data within the organization. Now, we already operate, as you can see, a decentralized data organization. But where data mesh is helping us as an organization is how we optimize our ways of working, discoverability of data in the organization, and how we can govern data effectively. How? As I mentioned, by centralizing the storage and location of those assets on our shared infrastructure. Again, you'll notice that the relationships and ownership of source systems and vendors remain within the lines of business. We might have some production application databases like the CMS for BBC.com or our finance systems. Those teams have the most domain knowledge of that raw data, so that's why they remain responsible for it. However, when onboarded onto the platform, those assets are located on the shared infrastructure, which means other data teams can access that really easily so that we can share and reuse data across the organisation. One challenge, however, is how do we maintain visibility of which assets are responsible and owned by each domain in the shared infrastructure? And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. Now, how we get to that picture, there's two key aspects that, in our view, go hand in hand, and that is technology and culture. We're going to start off with the easy bit, which is the tech side of things. Studios is a very lean organisation, as I mentioned, and so we have a SaaS-first strategy. We don't have large engineering teams that can be dedicated to just maintaining infrastructure. So it means we're very specific about when we choose to build things ourselves and when we reach out to partners to support our efforts. We started building the data platform in April this year, so we're very early into our data mesh journey. But let me walk you through our initial architecture and some of the vendors and partners that we have in place. So I'm slightly spoiling the storage bit here, but let me cover ingest first. We use Snowflake data sharing. Several of our vendors also use Snowflake, and so it provides a really easy way for us to get direct access to the data without needing to build data pipelines or worry about ingest processes. It's almost as if the data was in our environment, which is really, really efficient for us and much easier for us to manage. We also have Airflow, which is a great open source tool for data orchestration, and it's great for teams that have data engineering capabilities within them, with maybe connectors that are into source systems that we own and manage in BBC Studios, or where there isn't an out-of-the-box connector that we need to build. And then we also have Fivetran, which is helping our teams that don't have a data engineering team to use ready-made connectors, about hundreds of different enterprise data sources. And Fivetran does the heavy lifting for those teams in connecting to those data sources and bringing the data into our platform. Let me move on to storage, and so for there we're using Snowflake, as I revealed, and we have a bronze, silver and gold kind of medallion architecture where we have our raw data as well as transformed and cleansed and then curated assets all in a single location. We've moved away from a traditional separate data lake and data warehouse, mainly because we're a small team, and so having that in one place makes it easier to manage, and also storage costs nowadays means it's much more feasible to do this. On transformations, we're using open source tools like Airflow and dbt, and by creating that common pattern, it enables our data teams to collaborate much more easily, and also helps us with the next box, which is observability and discoverability. And this is where we're using CIFL. And in my view, this is the real key to unlocking a successful data mesh, having that comprehensive view of platform operation. And we're going to jump back to that one in a sec. But the final thing I want to do is give a lens to the future. We're also partnering with Databricks, and they've got some really great tools for data science that our new data science teams are going to be starting to use to collaborate really effectively together and produce the production machine learning models that will power the new data-driven product experiences on BBC.com and our other online products. So I said observability and discoverability, in my view, is the key to a successful data mesh. I've got an example here that I'm going to walk through. I've worked, as I may have mentioned, for some organisations that have done data mesh, but maybe not chose to centralise all of that infrastructure in a single place. Maybe they've created a central data warehouse that is mesh. Now, while this gives some of the teams more autonomy because they can choose different tools and they can work in different ways, and that may actually help them move faster. But you don't get the benefits of shared infrastructure. And secondly, it can break the interoperability of data products. In this example, let's say there's a failure in one of our key sales data pipelines that we've got here. There may be other products within the data mesh that also depend on that data being correct. What happens if there's an issue? And I'm going to walk through a real-life example that one of my teams faced in a previous role. So here we have, first of all, a kind of legacy data flow. There wasn't any ingest patterns mandated in this data mesh, so we cut corners as an organisation by relying on a legacy data flow to bring data in. And we had data from different sources, some tills, we even had some mainframe systems still kicking about the show. And we had an external third-party team that would process all of this data into a single customer view. That ran on physical infrastructure, by which I mean a single physical server that may as well have just been under someone's desk somewhere. You're already imagining the kind of challenges that we faced. We then had a data domain team that had a pipeline to copy that data from the SCV into Snowflake for consumers of the data to use. And my Insights platform team would then use that data to power the visualization engine that we built and sold to suppliers so that they could use that data to make data-driven decisions. Now, the Insights platform, interestingly, for a retail company, was the most profitable product that this company sold. So it was a very important product with significant reputational damage with suppliers if the data was incorrect and they'd made decisions using the data we were making available to them. We had a frequent issue with this pipeline where the data volume was too large for the limited infrastructure that was doing that batch process into the SCV. It always used to happen over Black Friday. It was almost guaranteed and happened at regular points throughout the year. So the data wasn't complete. Now, firstly, you might hope that there was some automated checks or some validation in the pipeline before it got to the SCV. There wasn't, but even if there was, this is separate infrastructure. So the data team that need to access that to bring it into Snowflake didn't have any visibility to the status of that pipeline. Their perspective, they're just copying data from one source to another, which if that passes, is successful. And then upstream, we'd have absolutely no idea until a supplier reported an issue and said that something was wrong, which is the worst way to find out about a data quality issue. Now, maybe the data team could have had some checks into their pipeline, but those pipelines were also not on shared infrastructure. So we as a consumer couldn't see what the status of that pipeline was. Also, thinking about what checks they could implement, they're not experts in the domain knowledge. They don't have access to any of the source systems. So the checks that they could implement are limited. Again, we're reliant on suppliers to inform us of issues. One point we even considered, do we implement our own validation process in our platform? But what should the checks be for us? We don't know the standards of the data. We don't know what quality looks like. Also, should we be expected as consumers to validate all the data that we use in the mesh? It's not a sustainable position. How we solved this was with email, which isn't a great solution. The company that managed the SCV process had a daily email manually sent out, no automation, manually sent out to a list of contacts, including myself, every morning with the status of where the SCV was. Don't think I need to say that having a manual process for doing this is a bad idea, especially when it's for, I don't know, critical data assets like sales or customer data that powers the most profitable product that a company sells. It's not the best solution. But aside from that, it breaks the principles of data mesh. We were on that list because of how critical our product was. But what about the consumers down here? How do they know that there's an issue with the quality of the data? What this does is spread distrust in the data and in the data mesh. It left my team considering, should we find alternative sources of data because we can't rely on this one? And it really, these are kind of all of the indicators of an unhealthy data mesh. And it's one of the reasons when I came back to the BBC, why I prioritised getting some effective tools to perform data observability and quality straight from the beginning of our new platform. As I mentioned earlier, we chose CIFL for this, mainly because they work with a lot of our partners, so we can bring Snowflake and the Databricks assets into a single catalogue, which is really great, but also around their product vision about creating a centralised, cohesive view of observability, discoverability, and governance, which is really exciting. So here we've got all of the assets in our platform. We can also add things like our visualizations, dashboards, Airflow DAGs, and DBT models. There we've got the usual features, such as, the column definitions. We can have some metadata about who owns the data assets. But where this gets really interesting and useful for us is the little no incidents box in the top of the catalogue, which is automatically driven by monitors and data quality checks that are defined in CIFL. Here we've got a completeness monitor that's actually running on our international user behaviour data for BBC.com. And using a machine learning model that runs on our data set, we can evaluate the daily row count of the data that's ingested. And if that row count is outside the model area, an incident is created in CIFL, and then notifications are sent to the data team to go and investigate. On the left here, you can see there was a little spike in June that's outside the normal range. This was actually due to news of the Titan submersible, which was a real big peak event globally for BBC News. And it really demonstrated that in times of breaking news, where trusted, reliable news coverage is needed, we perform really strongly as an organisation. Now, we knew why this incident happened. It was kind of very obvious. Breaking news, driving much higher traffic than usual. But what if the issue wasn't as obvious? Now, that's where full comprehensive lineage comes in. Not only how tables relate to each other, but also what assets are using that data. Now, we didn't have any live issues, thankfully, touch wood, of our data platform. So the CIFL team have put together some screenshots for us to kind of walk you through how this would work. So we've got a very green example here. We've got some tables on the right with some with no incidents, some customers and orders data. And we can see here that that is powered by some staging data that is pulled into a table using a DBT model. Let's say there was an incident with this data. So here we've got that same orders table, and there's some urgent incidents on that data asset. Using the lineage, we can go and see that upstream, there is another view that this is dependent on that has some incidents on it, that may be the root cause of incidents on the orders table. Not only that though, as you can see, we can track the column lineage to see how that flows through the data structure. We can even see what operational processes are involved, such as this DBT model. This approach treats data the same way I would traditionally in my old software engineering world. It treats it like a data product. It makes it easy to alert on issues. It helps us with diagnosing data quality issues and finding the root cause. And critically for us, in a successful data mesh, it helps keep consumers informed so that they can manage the impact on their assets. And this transparency creates greater confidence in our data and is what we think helps operate a successful data mesh. Now, the tech bit is the easy part. We've got some really great partners that we're working with to build the data platform out. And there's a load of vendors at Big Data London that are all trying to solve similar challenges. But culture is the tricky part. There's no one-click application to fix culture, but it's absolutely critical to the success of the data platform, arguably more so than the technology choices that we make. So how are we driving the culture to get to a data mesh model? Firstly, bringing our data engineers and data teams that already work in the organisation along with us on the journey. Behind all of the data assets that we create and we have existing in BBC Studios are people. They're people that care so much about the organisation, want to deliver value for the business, and are really motivated to realise the value that we can unlock at BBC Studios. So this process isn't about cutting headcount. It's about bringing and reorganising people together so that we can focus on what actually drives value, leaving the technical operations of the platform and infrastructure to our partners like Snowflake and Databricks and the other vendors that we bring in, and focusing on what drives value, which is getting access to more data, building better insights, and helping the business use data more effectively. Some of this was easy in terms of the pain points, in my view anyway, are quite obvious of where our organisation are struggling. But getting a consensus of how we solve it is the slightly trickier part. So the way we approached this was actually conducting a 6-week platform proof of concept, where we got our data engineers and teams together that use existing data assets, and we put together a proof of concept over 6 weeks, where we literally built up a platform within that 6-week period. We defined some key data patterns that use stakeholder data. We then implemented those vendors into different combinations to see how it would work as a cohesive unit. And off the back of that, we made the vendor selections that you've seen that we're now using to build the data platform with. And as a result of that, by getting everyone involved in the decision making, by getting people to see the value and the benefits of how we can change data access in the organisation, we've got people on board with our vision, which is really important. Next, data governance. As I said at the beginning, our data estate has led to a very risk-averse standpoint from privacy, which is totally understandable. But our principles around centralising data storage and defining key business processes and bringing our privacy teams along the journey with us has allowed us to define new ways of working and move the organisation towards a vision of data democratisation. It's also helped us really cut out some of the red tape that's blocked some of our activities in the past. So now our data teams are now enabled to explore new use cases and find opportunities to use our data in different ways, and in ways that we wouldn't have considered before. Next, we have becoming effective at prioritization and how we focus on delivering value. Why this is important, to give you a bit of context, before we embarked on this journey, there was a range of feeling towards data at our executive committee level. Some members were even actively against having data be more important and more central as an organisation. So getting that executive committee support is really vital. A, because we need them to support our investments that we need to make in data, and also in getting other teams to work and collaborate with us. So our focus has been demonstrating how we can deliver value quickly and effectively, and ultimately help the business grow using data. We've been doing a small number of proof of concept projects, including the data platform one that I mentioned. And another example that we've got here is actually of our insights team, our audience insights team, that have been looking at ways that we can analyse and visualise different programme formats to see what insights we might be able to gain by looking at common format features, and then how that relates to recommissions from our customers, which are the broadcasters that purchase our programmes. And some of this early insight has really helped to demonstrate to our senior leaders what the benefits of being more data-driven, or at least more data-informed, are as an organisation. We've still got some ways to go, especially around how we get the balance right between being data-driven and the creative freedom that's created some of the most popular programmes that our audiences love. But we're getting there, and the progress that we've made already has really helped to move the needle in terms of SEC support. And then finally, iterate. Having an iterative approach is really key to not getting overwhelmed in the art of the possible. There's so many areas that we are yet to dive into, but by starting small, and Ben and I, we've only been starting this since April, starting small and demonstrating that value early and regularly is really fundamental to getting the business to back the approach that we're taking. So I've kind of took you through where we are now and how we got there. So what is next for us? So as I mentioned, we are rolling out the new .com website outside the UK, and we're supporting the BBC.com team with their needs from the data platform to help create new data-driven audience experiences that our audiences outside the UK really love and can come back to. We're also looking at how we expand our real-time data capabilities to unlock advertising revenue growth, looking at how we can use real-time to help with real-time ad decisioning so that we can increase advertising revenue. We're looking at how we expand our platform capabilities. We've got a lot of work and a lot of things we want to do in data science, so we're really excited that Databricks are helping us along with that journey, and also looking at how we can use the data platform for other purposes in the organisation. And then finally looking at how we productionise some of the audience insights work that we've done to help give our content commissioners access to more data to help them with their decision making. Thank you so much for listening to me. I appreciate it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but we're really excited about the journey that we're on at BBC Studios. I think we're just about coming up to time, so I'm not sure if we've got any time for Q&A, but if not, and you've got any questions or thoughts, reach out to me on email or LinkedIn, or grab me over the next